time to introduce ourselves.
What's up, guys, and this is Rikk, and you are watching the Pumpkin Patch. So today on the Pumpkin Patch, I just want to do a little blog thing that I've been thinking about a lot lately. I think I'm going to start a small series of videos about bands that I have been in and sort of their impact on me and where it's led me, similar to the ones that I wanted you guys to do about your musical journey into horror punk. So, as you may know, I haven't always been in horror punk bands, and so just, sort of giving you a little bit more information about how I got to where I am, and the bands that I played in that helped me get there. First in as a checkoff, the band that I currently play with, the Writhers. We actually got added last minute to a show yesterday with Stellar Corpses again, and it was a great time. It was a lot of fun, and I'm glad that we got to do that. It's a bummer that Madsen wasn't able to play because I was looking forward to actually trying to see them, but it was still fun, and I love seeing Stellar Corpses, and I love getting to share the stage with them. Next month in June, we will be playing at the Tower Bar in San Diego. For any of you interested in coming out, we're opening for the Jason, or actually, I don't know if we're opening. We're playing with the Jasons, and then on the 22nd, which is a few days after, we'll be playing at Soda Bar again with Bat, which is with members of Resurrects, Stellar Corpses, The Brains, Necromantics. That'll be fun. Both shows will have different sets and obviously different stage antics, so I definitely recommend you guys checking out both if you can. Without any further ado, I guess I'll go into the actual blog topic, which today is my band, the LA Girlz, and subsequent bands, and previous bands before that. I don't think I'm going to edit any of this video, so if I fuck up, I fuck up. It's whatever. It's human. So I started playing the drums when I was 13, and actually started my first band maybe like a month in to trying to learn how to play. Didn't know what to do, didn't know how to do anything. I knew like one fill. We wrote like one song that was literally the same thing the whole time. It's okay, that's what happens. 13 years old, just kind of hanging out with friends. My only friends who played anything at the time. Obviously, that didn't last very long. Eventually found other musicians or people that had instruments. Not necessarily exactly the same, but, they had instruments. And ended up playing with them for quite a while, actually, for a band that didn't actually write any music or play any shows. I think we were together for like a year, and all it was Mario Kart and Domino's Pizza. Like, we'd go to the bass player's house, who was pretty spoiled and pretty rich, and we'd go to his like mansion or just large home and play N64 at his house and eat Domino's, and that was it. And we'd say that we were having band practice. So again, didn't really do much, just had fun hanging out. And then the band after that was actually the one where we started writing music. It was with my friends Jorge, Andrew, and Jerome, and it was called Setting the Sail. I think they had already been a band before I joined, but they didn't have a drummer before, so they just had music written. And it was funny because it was like, a little scene kid, post-hardcore band. And just thinking about it now, knowing what Jorge and Andrew are into and how they are, and what, eventually turned into the LA Girlz, it's kind of funny thinking about Jorge as a scene kid still. But that's what he was, a little emo kid with his, you know, and his super tight shirts and all that good stuff. And we had like one song. It's called Atticus Finch, and it was a pretty cliche breakdown oriented song, but it was a lot of fun to play. I feel like I definitely started growing as a drummer from just playing that song over and over again, to try and perfect what I was doing. We had band practice pretty frequently, but we didn't actually ever do anything. Um, I mean, we did. We would write music, but we'd just kind of jam and have fun. And they ended up becoming some close friends of mine, and still are to this day. Um, I think we played in that band for maybe a year as well, where we were just jamming around, and eventually like members would come and go, and but we weren't really ever actively writing anything. We were just kind of playing. Never played any shows, never did anything like that. I remember that must have been sophomore year into junior year, because in my junior year I was in a school band, and that's when I actually got some experience performing live in front of people. And the one of my good friends, Anthony, joined us in setting the sail, and at some point we recorded with his uncle, who is the bass player in the Faction. And at that time, Jorge and myself happened to, respectively be getting into punk rock. And so for me, I was still into everything that we were playing and or trying to play, and were listening to before, but Jorge was getting out of it, and so he was getting a little nervous that we were playing in front of a member of a, you know, pretty popular, or I guess pretty impactful punk rock band. And when we were recording it, just didn't do any of the stuff that he was supposed to be doing, and it didn't sound at all like what it was supposed to be. But I guess it was fun. It was a MySpace post-hardcore screamo band. But the important piece is that eventually turned into the LA Girlz. We, I guess, broke up for about 6 months. I was just jamming with friends still, and then they hit me up and told me that they were going to start a punk band and asked if I wanted to join. And I said, okay. I had already been getting into punk rock myself, and so it just worked out really well. We played our first show and had music that we supposedly wrote. We were doing covers as well. We were going to cover The Descendants, and I think Minor Threat, but I don't think any of us actually remembered the songs that we wrote or the songs that we were covering. I don't even know how it happened. Like, I think we practiced a couple times and we should have had them down, but we didn't. Like, we were just so nervous, and they were super fucked up, and we didn't remember any of it. I think we took a little bit longer to practice for our second show, so we actually had music that we knew. Um, but the second show was at the Chula Vista Library in front of the mayor and other random families, because it was like a talent show, and we were like a punk band trying to play in front of these people. And suffice it to say, it did not go off very well. However, we had friends that came and jumped on stage with us and covered some songs with us, so that was a lot of fun. The third show we played, I set up a show at this stupid place in a mall by my house, and that shit popped off. Like, it was a lot of fun. It was really cool to throw, because we had bands jump on. But the weird thing was, that show, we had a flyer, and on the flyer it had a punk rocker punching an emo kid in the face, and the emo kid was wearing a Forever Ends Now shirt. And Forever Ends Now ends up being some of our buddies, their metalcore band, they were pretty popular in San Diego at the time. They were like local legends. And I don't know what happened, but I think some of those kids got really pissed off, even though it was like a joke or a tribute to them or something. I didn't make the flyer, but that's what I was told. And so I don't know if they were like legitimately pissed off or just saying that they were, but they ended up coming to the show and like having a good time too. But I tell that story because that eventually sparked the song Rikk Straight Edge, which is interesting because it uses me as the vehicle, but it basically talks about like crews and those, because San Diego is a big straight edge crew place, that some of those guys are a little too serious. And like me, for example, I'm straight edge, but I'm still hanging out with kids that do drugs and things like that. And the song says that they're trying to also protect me, and we're like a mutual family, basically. Um, Eventually, we start playing shows with other hardcore bands in Chula Vista. That was a lot of fun. We made a lot of good friends, and typically we would play at a place. We would play in Chula Vista at a friend named Jordan's house, or we would play in Bonita at a friend named Mason's house. And those shows always popped off. They were a lot of fun. We had some pretty good crowd reactions. Like, I know that we were never really taken seriously by some of the bands that we played with, but we had friends that were actually, we had like pretty stellar mosh pits. Um, in this band, I guess the impact of this one for me is really solidifying my ability to play punk rock, which is, I consider myself a punk rock drummer now. A lot of the stuff is a little bit more, like a lot of the more metal stuff is a little bit harder for me. And punk rock has always been, since I've started playing it, a lot easier, a lot more fluid, I guess, for my abilities. And aside from that, being able to work with Jorge in such a deeper level musically, I think, since we went from two different bands together and like we wrote most of our songs together, that was really cool and really helpful, I think, and grew my chops as a musician altogether. Um, Also, I was able to write music on my own, which was cool for the first time. I wrote a song. I was like really anti-rave at the time, because I think it's because I had a girlfriend who was into raves, and I just didn't like. I was like angry straight edge kid um, at the moment, and so I wrote songs about like how bad of an idea it is to go to raves, how lame they are and stuff. So that was cool, being able to kind of channel that in and write it the way that those ones always came out, kind of more thrashy and metal core-ish, which is what I was influenced by anyway, even if it was still a punk band. So that was cool. Eventually, LA Girlz would sort of stop, but we did play a lot of cool ending shows. Like our final show, if I'm not mistaken, our final show before Jorge moved out of town was at Jordan's house, and it didn't actually happen. Like, we didn't get a chance to play. Unless I'm getting like mistaken, but we got the cops called on us right before we started. But it was like a lot of people were there, so they were pretty stoked to see us play for the last time, I think. And then we had a few reunion shows, and those were also really cool. So the kids that liked us, they were really into it, and I guess the kids that didn't don't really matter. We played like 2 or 3 reunion shows just separately, and those always went off without a hitch. It was a lot of fun. People were actually fucking moving and you know getting into shit and all that, so it was fun. Um, After, little tidbit, after the LA Girlz, before They Feed at Night, I was actually working in a project with Jorge as well, called Jorge and the Nicotines. In the link where it'll have the LA Girlz album, Jorge and the Nicotines is also on there. And that's actually a folk punk band. And the fun thing about that was that I realized that I could write shit on the spot. Like, we wrote it, I wrote my parts in the studio. And even though my favorite drum part did not end up on the album because of just the way it was recorded, it was recorded in a garage, I'm still pretty stoked on how everything came out. I was able to put, the punk influence, but also I had like a tambourine and was throwing things in like that, and I was just kind of writing things a little bit differently. So it was a lot of fun to be able to do that and like understand the patterns that I was going to be doing, and I think that helped with my abilities to play in They Feed at Night, which will be the next video that I talk about. So yeah, I think the impact of LA Girlz still sort of sits with me, getting me more into punk rock and getting me more into playing that way in that style. The downfall of that band, unfortunately, ended up being drug use. I think like that's when things got a little bit more difficult, was sort of dealing with Jorge and Andrew's drug use sometimes. But luckily they pulled through, and we're all still really close. And I love the projects that they're doing right now. Andrew was in it for a little while, but Jorge and his cousin Jake are in a band called Free Paintings, and they're super rad. I love their music, and I love playing with them. And hope we can do it again soon. I'll link them below as well to see what Jorge is up to right now. Yeah, I don't know what else to add to this one, so I'm gonna call it right now. Thank you for sticking around. Thanks for taking any interest in whatever my musical journey was. And if you have played in bands and have some stories to share, please comment below, or make a reply video. As always, I'm Rikk, and you've been watching The Pumpkin Patch.